Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Team Tuesday, where we discuss teams and their self-destructing abilities with Mike Lyons. Hey Mike, welcome back.
Hi, good to see you.
It's like a Mission Impossible message.
This team will self-destruct in
30 seconds. I'm glad that you and I are old enough to remember that. Well, no, these days there's the movie as well, so people might actually
oh my gosh, that's right.
That. Yeah.
I think that whole series is winding down this coming summer, but I don't know.
Let's see. If anyone is interested, I definitely recommend the TV series from the 90s or even late 80s, I guess.
There you go.
Really great. All right, but let's talk teams. But, before we jump into the team self-destruction abilities, do share with us, Mike, what was the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
Yeah, hands down, it's going to be the Phoenix Project. You would know this one. Most people in the Agile sort of world have read the Phoenix Project by Gene Kim and Kevin Bear and George Spafford. This is a newer copy, but I've probably read it, 3 or 4 times, and I lost my original copy. I had to buy another one. It had handwritten notes in here, like where I would put people's names. I'd be like, oh man, Kevin totally acts like this guy. What I love about this is, for those of you that aren't familiar, the Phoenix Project, it's a novel. It's a work of fiction, but it's grounded in the ground truth realities of what you and I probably deal with on a regular basis. You will, Scrum Masters out there, you will resonate with the characters of this book. It's a fun read. It's an exciting story. And again, it will just hit home. It's one of my favorites. Highly recommend. That's the book I recommend. Just if you haven't read it, it would be, I would say.
What's one lesson from the book that you still remember and you think Scrum Masters should pay attention to when they read the book?
Yeah, the one key takeaway for me when I think about it, it's a novel about DevOps and the importance of the increasing your frequency of deployments. But one of the key takeaways is this, and I'll sum it up in a quote from the book. Improving daily work is more important than doing daily work. Think about that for just a second. Improving daily work is more important than actually doing the daily work. Wow, okay. Well, will that make your retrospectives more powerful? You bet they will. You bet they will.
Also, it requires us to think about how can we bring retrospective aspects into everyday work.
Oh, good. Yes, well said. I think that's exactly right. I was with a team recently. They were sharing, they weren't doing retrospectives. They had sort of given it up, and well, why is that? You sort of ask why. Why is that? Well, we weren't getting any value out of them. Why weren't you getting any value? Well, we didn't see any improvements. Why didn't you see any improvements? Well, we didn't capture any improvements. Why didn't you capture any? Well, because our product owner won't let us have time to improve. Okay. Now hold on. So it's not that you're skipping retrospectives. That's a symptom of a different problem, isn't it? The problem is something else. So anyway, it's just sort of this idea that when I think about that book, that's a key takeaway. Improving daily work is more important than doing daily work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely a quote to frame and put on the wall, every Scrum Master out there.
Stitch it on a pillow. I don't know if you're
maybe not a pillow, but an Instagram meme or something that could work.
Oh, there you go.
And share it with everybody. Yeah. So, of course, today is also Team Tuesday, and I'm sure you have some amazing story of a self-destructing team coming our way. So let's jump right into it, Mike. Share that story with us. Give us a little bit about the context, and then walk us through those steps, those little things that over time, maybe they looked innocent enough at the start, but eventually brought the team crumbling down.
Yeah, one story that comes to mind, and this is probably a couple years ago now, but working on a contract, and the at the outset of the team, we decided we would uh, bring on some business analysts, people to serve in this business analyst role. Now, I've been a business analyst and I sort of have some experience with this, but it kind of was like, well, what are these business analysts going to do? It's not an accountability in Scrum, and we were going to practice Scrum. 2-week sprints was our time box, and we did have a product owner and a Scrum master, but I was brought in as a more of a sort of delivery lead type role, and I just was observing as we were getting going. With the business analysts, and this is not a shame or judgment, they were quite talented. They're very good at sort of helping end users with vocalizing and sharing what they might need in their product, and so a valuable skill to be sure. And then we had a handful of developers, testers that were going to build the thing. But you might be able to sort of guess where we were headed here. The business analysts soon began to almost be an abstraction layer between the user and the product owner, or customer and product owner, and our developers.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Well, they began to create all the user stories, and then the developers would come to sprint planning, and there would be, the product owner would stop showing up at sprint planning. And so the developers would ask a question, and they'd be asking the question to the business analyst who had the sprint before begun to, I'm going to use some key language here, begun to gather requirements. And now they start saying, well, in order to make sprint planning better, we need to get ahead of sprint planning. So we're gonna start gathering requirements about a month ahead, and pretty soon it's 2 months ahead. And we're gonna do a really good job of documenting these user stories. And they became these long, verbose requirements documents. Pretty soon there's an attachment that's called a design spec. And you start picking up all these smells of waterfall delivery, it's sort of like, this is starting to sound familiar. And sure enough, over the course of 6, 8, 9 months, pretty soon the product owner's nowhere to be seen. The business analyst is sort of speaking for the product owner. The developers are 2 and 3 steps removed from the customer. The voice of the customer has been abstracted. I used that word abstraction earlier. Abstracted. So you've got a customer to a PO to a BA to a developer. And we're smack dab in the sort of, they're smaller waterfalls is what they are.
Well,
and everybody's
not that small when you collect requirements a month in advance anymore.
Maybe it's not that small, but
did they end up having requirement review meetings as well?
And this is what ends up, towards the end, because what ends up happening is inevitably we're building the wrong thing, or we didn't know what the spec meant. So now you go into this new cycle, the sort of closeout of the sprint cycle. That takes a different sprint. And eventually you end up with what is a multi-sprint waterfall design, build, test, deploy. And you've sort of violated all of the principles and practices of what we would call agility. I remember
being in an auditorium. I think this was like 2008, if I remember correctly. It was an Agile conference somewhere. I shall not name the place. And we were talking about sprints and Scrum, and somebody says, of course, with a lot of experience in project management, they say, but isn't Scrum really just a collection of smaller, shorter waterfalls? And this is something that we've heard before as well. And I think the story that you just told is quite an amazing illustration of how it isn't. Because in Scrum, we collapse the whole flow from ideation to delivery into a very small period of time. And we do that because the speed to feedback, the time that it takes from creating an idea to collecting the feedback, needs to be the shortest humanely possible, a few minutes if possible, right? And this idea that Scrum is just a collection of smaller waterfalls enlarges the time between idea and feedback to the point of even doing a few months and perhaps even more. Yeah. And your story just illustrates this so clearly that the goal of a Scrum team is to go from idea to customer feedback within one sprint. It is not to have all the requirements collected ahead of the sprint, have all the requirements delivered during the sprint, and then shipping it off at the end of. That's not what we're trying to do. If possible, we want to get customer feedback day one of the sprint.
That's right. I think that's one of the reasons we're probably drawn to agile ways of working is that speed of feedback, fast to learn. Yeah, you hit on some key points there. If I could, when you think about this idea that we do need to have some sense of the software development life cycle. It's not like we can just sort of abandon it. Of course, we need to have some vision, some design, but we can do that quickly as we go. I think where people, and maybe in the conference, your example you gave, aren't these just mini waterfalls? I think one of the key differentiators there is we want leaders that are going to give us a clear vision. It's not just sort of the wild west, if you will. It's not. We want to know we're headed in this direction, and leadership, C-suite executives. If you could keep us in the loop on where we're headed, we'll take you there. But that's pretty much all we need. I don't need a plan.
Because we build the process around always knowing that you're wrong as early as possible, right? Because
say that again.
We build a process about always knowing that you're wrong as early as possible. Because here's the thing, no one builds it right the first time, period. Right? And the whole waterfall concept is this concept that you can somehow magically define what is right before you see it, implement it before you test it before you show it to a customer, and deliver it perfect the first time. That's just not possible. That's an idealized, super simplistic view of how work gets done. It never really happens, right? So what you said, Agile is really just about being fast to learn. I think that's a key phrase that we need to keep in our mind. Also because the dynamic of work totally transforms. When we have feedback cycles, we can't be wrong. And this is the problem, right? The problem is we're trying to avoid being wrong. But the only way to do that is to get feedback early. But we don't want to go for feedback because we think we're wrong. And that creates a negative spiral that will eventually destroy the project. Sooner or later, all waterfall projects fail. The question is just how badly. So the question for us as Agilists is, how can we make sure we build enough feedback cycles so that we know we're wrong as soon as we do something wrong?
And that's for Scrum, that's a key bit. I think you mentioned this idea a bit earlier, but I know lots of teams that follow the 5 events on a calendared cadence, and there's nothing wrong with that. Please, I love the idea that you do sprint planning at the beginning, and then you do sprint review and sprint retro as the bookends. Okay, big fan. But is that the only time you can run a retrospective? Well, of course not. Of course not. What if on day 3 something gets wonky? Okay, well, let's do a quick 15, 20-minute retro on that thing. I don't need a sailboat. I don't need the 4 Ls. Let's just do a quick ready retro. I call them ready retros. Just real quick on that topic. So this fast to learn, fast feedback can exist in the Scrum world. You don't have to wait because the retro's 8 days from now. You could run it today.
I really like that word, ready retro. I think I'm going to start to steal it with pride. I'll tell everybody that I learned it from Mike. Thank you, Mike. That was a great conversation.
You bet. That was really fun. I learned a lot. Thank you for sharing.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.